Guys, I'm super excited about what is about to happen through this YouTube channel. I'm gonna be honest with you, I drug my feet for many years on YouTube. I knew it was such a great thing. Shout out to my friend Liz Germain. If you're not subscribing to her channel or learning from her, there's really three people that I've learned. Well, actually, four now. I've learned in the very beginning from my friend Liz Germain, who learned from Daryl Eves, who's the guru of all of this, who I follow and learn from every day. And then there's my friend Sean Cannell, who I've been learning from also. But my friend Dr. Myron Golden, I've really learned a lot from him just over the last couple of weeks, actually. And I'm actually doing a training with my team from some of the stuff that I learned from him today. But what I want to first start to dive into with you guys is some things that I believe is super important about things that I've learned over the years because of what I've done in my field. I've been at the top of the fitness industry for many years, nominated for a PhD in nutrition in 2019 by the World Nutrition Organization. Whether I get that or not, all of these degrees, I would say probably out of all of these, the most important one is getting ordained. Awards and stuff are great, but my identity is in God and the one who created me. And I have a moral responsibility to start taking people from pain into purpose, into health, and into striving. And look, you can't serve and help everyone, but I know that God has given me a clear message to help a lot of people, and it's my moral and responsibility and obligation to do that. So today, my first live video, I have a schedule. It's going to be every week, guys. I'm going to be dropping videos in here every single week, every day, every week. And one of the things that has changed the way I think about health is our DNA. And so what I really, really found, to be honest with you, about each part of our DNA is that, it plays one of the most crucial roles at developing and determining our health and well-being. And a lot of people are doing it different methods, but the results are the same. Our DNA contains genetic instructions that teaches our body how it's to develop, how it's to function, and how it's to maintain. And that's what our DNA is all about. It serves in several ways in which our DNA has this influence on our body. And so I'm going to actually dive in to a couple of these today. There's just 7 of these. I'm going to go through them. And I want you guys to kind of understand the bigger picture of where this goes. And I do DNA testing. And the people that actually follow through with it for a long extended period of time get the results. Most people are looking for a quick fix. I would tell you, whether you're struggling with anything in your life, whether that's, autoimmune or testosterone problems. We have a testosterone course that's launching next month that you'll be seeing a lot of instructions about, is just because we have an energetic body. We have the availability to heal this temple that God has given us. And I'm going to actually talk a little bit about that, about the responsibilities of how important it is to God that we do take care of ourselves. And so as we discuss each of these 7 topics about our DNA, I want you to take notes if you can, and learn about your genetics, and then obviously get a DNA test done, and then learn what food sensitivities you have, what environmental sensitivities you have, things that you can use over a long period of time. My friend Mike Weingarten, I did this with him a couple of years ago. He'd struggle with his weight, struggle with a lot of things. And now he's lost over 90 pounds and is super, super healthy. And we're able to make tweaks. Called me a couple of weeks ago about some things he was doing, and we tweaked a couple things, and it gave him the issues that he was struggling with, gave him access back over those. And so the body tells us everything. So the first thing I want to talk about is genetic traits. Okay. What you have to understand is that our DNA contains genes that determine our physical characteristics. Okay. And genes are actually segments of our DNA, and they provide instructions for producing, proteins, which are essential for the structure of the body's functions. And each of these proteins, are super specific, but they have their own role in the body's functions. So these genetic variations or combination of genes are inherited from our family, from our parents. And they determine these traits like our eye color, our hair color, our height, and all these we would call certain specific conditions. So for example, there's a gene called the MC1R gene, and it can determine our hair color with variations associated with that hair color, okay? So similar genes like HERC2 or OCA2 play a role at determining our eye color, while genes like, growth hormone attribute to our height. And so as, we're wanting to understand the body, these genes give us an understanding of why our body is the way it is. And so, my mom has green eyes. I have brown eyes. You can see a lot of similarities in mothers and sons in the types of colors of their eyes. So second is disease susceptibility. Okay. This is one of my parts that I'm going to talk about over the next couple of weeks about how we can change these genes. I want you to understand that we're not bound to these genes. We used to think for centuries and decades that we were bound to these genes, but we're not. We're not bound to these genes because of epigenetics, because of nutrigenomics. We can actually change these gene expressions. So DNA variations can influence our susceptibility to certain diseases. Okay, and I'm going to give you an example of one with my father that I was able to reverse and know now that I won't have that gene increased in my body. So some genetic mutations or the variations of the genes can increase the risk of developing a particular condition. And these variations can be inherited spontaneously, which we've heard over the years, but they don't have to be, right? For instance, if you look at mutations of the BRCA1 or BRCA2 genes, they can increase breast cancer or ovarian cancer, okay? For instance, there's an APOE gene that is associated with the high risk developing Alzheimer's. There's all these different ones. For instance, there are 19 genes in your body that are affected when you have atherosclerosis, okay? So my father had atherosclerosis, and I gave him a nutraceutical that actually was shown in published research to reverse 17 of the 19 genes in the opposite direction of the disease process. And now years later, my dad no longer has atherosclerosis because of that one nutraceutical. We call them activators. They're not supplements. And you'll see I will be doing some teaching on NRF2 activation and its effects on disease and reducing oxidative stress. It's one thing that is a game changer when it comes to our health. It's the only clinically proven pathway in history to reduce oxidative stress by 40 to 70% in 30 days and increase glutathione by 300%. So it's got a lot of these properties, and I'll go into some of those as we teach that. But let's go into the third piece is metabolism and nutrition. DNA influences our metabolism, which in the process by which our bodies convert food into energy. And then they carry out all these essential biomedical reactions, right? So genetic variations can impact our metabolic process and our response to all these different nutrients in the body, okay? So for instance, I'll give you an example. Variations in, there's an FTO gene, and it's been associated with an increased risk of obesity, okay? Some individuals may carry this genetic variation that affects their ability to metabolize certain nutrients, right? Such as lactose intolerant, resulting from variations of an LCT gene, which is the lactose intolerant gene, which can affect the digestion of lactose products. I am not a big fan of a lot of dairy products for people who struggle with their weight. Like I've never struggled with my weight, because I understand the variation of these genes, and I understand, which is another section that we'll be teaching on, about richness and diversity in your gut and how you can reverse a lot of these genes. So fourth big thing is drug responses. Genetic variations can affect how our body metabolizes or responds to medications. You know, for instance, there's variations in a gene called CYP2D6, and it can affect the metabolism of drugs such as codeine, antidepressants, or beta blockers. And I want to give you an example of these. For instance, at a young age, I had a reaction to aspirin. Okay. And I found out that my mom had the same reaction as a kid. I broke out hives all over my body. Now, later on in life, at the act of just probably stupidity, I realized that I had taken some Tylenol and I did not have a reaction. So my body genetically repositioned and redetermined itself to no longer have this disorder or this genetic mutation when it came to these types of genes that were produced by these types of drugs. Okay, so if you're understanding an individual's genetic profile through drug testing, it can help with, you know, healthcare professionals personalize medications for people to, you know, optimize treatment and outcomes with minimal results. So if you know you're allergic to something, you know, penicillin or whatever that is, you just don't take that. And I have clients all around the world. I have one in the UK that's allergic to a lot of foods. And, you know, if you are that deathly allergic to foods, you have to be able to understand that, right? And know that, right? So, and the fifth one is inherited disorders. Our DNAs carry genetic information that is inherited from parents. Genetic mutations can occur spontaneously or be passed through generations. These mutations can result in inherited disorders or conditions that individuals, you know, may get later on in life. You know, for examples, one, you know, that one of my friends, her kids have had is cystic fibrosis. It affects the lungs and digestive system. There's not a long-term usage of life. You know, it's called the CFTR gene. Okay, sickle cell anemia, an inherited blood disorder by the HBB gene. Let me just say this: testing of genes. Now, I believe there's good and bad in testing, but I believe that, you know, genetic testing can help with this. I do more of DNA testing than genetic testing, but I would tell you, if you have not been genetic tested, I would tell you to make sure that you get genetic tested, especially your children. So number 6 is the immune function system. Our DNA influences the structures and the function of our immune system. About 80% of our immune system is in our gut. You're going to see a lot of teaching over that over the next couple of weeks. Defends our bodies against the infections and diseases. Genetic variations can actually really affect the immune response, making certain individuals more susceptible to infections and autoimmune disorders. And there's a lot of stuff that you can do that my wife and I actually do on a regular basis by fasting and doing drinking a detox drink every month, so that our body and our DNA is not as susceptible to that. So our immune system is higher. You know, HLA is a human electrolyte antigen gene that they are associated with the increased susceptibility of autoimmune conditions like rheumatoid arthritis or celiac disease. You know, there's other genetic variations that can influence the production of the human immune system and its body to fight out these pathogens. So understanding these genetic factors can contribute to your approach of increasing your immune system. And that's where these epigenetics and nutrigenomics roles come in. So number 7 is the last one is aging and longevity. You know, I'll be 55 years old in July. I don't feel 55 years old. I feel 35. Why? Because I've learned that I'm not looking for a short-term fix when it comes to my health. You know, there's a lot of products on the market that give you a placebo effect. They give you a high, but there's no long-term proven studies. I use scientific, validated, peer-reviewed research. You know, DNA can play a major role in the aging process and our susceptibility to being related to that, right? Genetic factors influence how our cells themselves repair and maintain over a long period of time. You know, for instance, there's I mentioned this earlier, the APO gene is associated with difference in risks in developing Alzheimer's, okay? Genetic variations can also affect the integrity of our telomeres, which can protect gaps at the end of our chromosomes. Telomere length and maintenance are associated with the aging process, okay? I'm just going to throw this in there, okay? Studying the genetics of aging and age-related diseases provides you with a huge insight to potential interventions and strategies when it comes to delaying disease and extending your life. I mentioned the NRF2 pathway. I don't care what anybody says. You know, it's been proven over and over and over in published research and patents and scientific validation at Linus Pauling Institute, at over 37 different universities across the world. There was actually a study done in the National Institute of Aging showing that, you know, NRF2, activating the NRF2 pathway actually extended life and delayed disease. It was the only nutraceutical, non-pharmaceutical, that showed this. So super important to note that the influence of DNA and how it can perform when it comes to your health, okay? And genetic factors and how they interact with this, how environmental sensitivities interact. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff that the body can give you back through your DNA. It can tell, you know, one of the pieces that we find is it tells us about candida and mold and all these other sensitivities. And I you know, I sit there and I tell people, well, how does it, you know, they're like, well, it seems like it's reading our life. It is. It's telling you what your body needs. And I'm gonna finish with this. I think it's super important that as you go through these, I want to thank one of my good friends, Eric Thomas, for his shirts that I get from him every year. Just been a great relationship to build with him and people in his community, and being able to impact people that you've followed and served all your life. And so we'll give you examples. If you go to michaeldavidhuey.com, you can find, and it'll probably pop up on the screen here somewhere and at the bottom in the notes, but as you can see what DNA testing does, what specific food that your body doesn't want being taken out, and then over a time period, rotating the foods that you eat, all these things that help our body perform really the way God intended it to. And so I believe that we have found solutions. I mentioned to you that our testosterone testing course is going to be launching. The results that we got with people, nobody's getting with people. And so I hope that this encouraged you to find out, get a DNA test. It's not expensive, guys. It's you know, it's the same amount of money that it costs you to have a car payment, and you get it once and you have it forever, right? And you know, one of my good friends and mentors, financial mentors, just had 9 tests done for his family and couldn't believe the results that they got, and they were all happy, right? And so I hope that this encouraged you to learn about your DNA, and go to michaeldavidhuey.com, click on our services, scroll down, you can watch videos of people who went through it, people who have struggled with their health all their life, and they're no longer struggling. So God bless you.